Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome once again to the LMN Live Virtual Classroom. My name's Chris Davies. I'm a Senior Education Specialist here with LMN, and today I'm going to be walking you through yet another feature that's available with your LMN subscription, but more importantly, we're going to be taking a look at job costing, but for design build work. So today, we're going to be focusing on all the ins and outs when it comes to that very, very important feature or that very important aspect of your operational side of things, job costing. And what exactly is job costing? Well, job costing in theory, or the Coles notes, Cliff notes, whichever side of the border you're on, whatever your ultimate definition of job costing is estimated versus actuals. So the job costing feature will provide you with your estimated costs versus your actual costs, and of course, your estimated revenue versus the actual revenue earned for the actual jobs that you do. So realistically today, what we're going to be walking through are all the ins and outs on how you can take your jobs that you're creating in LMN and start looking at how you can job cost them to better plan for repeatable work in the future. So again, if this is a type of work that you're just experimenting with or just trying out to see if this is actually going to make you some revenue or not, the job costing feature in LMN will provide you guys the ins and outs, or basically the overall story on whether you should actually look at adding this to the list of design build projects that you offer versus maybe this one is not so good and let's not do these ones anymore because we're not making any money. So again, job costing is very important to help with your overall operations to understand what types of work are profitable, which types of work are not profitable. Now, you can also look at job costing as a tool to help you with your landscaping company and understanding if your estimators and or salespeople are doing their jobs accurately. Did you estimate high enough versus what the total outcome was on the actual project? Or did you sell it high enough versus the actual work that's involved in getting that project done? So job costing, yes, it's a very, very important tool. So we're going to be walking through this together today to give you a good understanding of how the job costing feature works for all of your design build work. Now, before I get into the actual webinar today and walk you through the actual job costing feature, always remember that if you have any questions throughout the course of my webinar today, please let me know. Hit me up on chat, hit me up on the Q&A, whatever the case may be. All right. If you have questions, I'm here to answer them. And please don't wait till the very end because, well, hopefully you might not forget them, right? We want to make sure that if there is a question that's important to you and to your landscaping company, you let us know. I'm here to answer them. Now, the information that I'm going to be walking through today will look a little bit different than what you might have in your own account. So that's only because, well, we're two different landscaping companies. I do things my way, you do things your way. But for most important reasons here, guys, the information that I am going to be sharing with you will relatively look very similar to what you guys have in your own accounts, so should make sense as we walk through the actual demonstrations. Lastly, feel free to work alongside us. So again, if I'm doing a setup or if I'm doing a job creation or going through setting up a job for job costing, please feel free to do the same in your own account. And bear in mind, if you get stuck anywhere, I'm here to help. So again, let me know, hit me up on chat or Q&A, and I'll be more than happy to try and get you out of that little sticky situation. Now, one other thing that I wanted to let everybody know, just in case it hasn't been mentioned before, but we do recommend that if you have any confidential or what you consider to be private questions about your company specifically, bear in mind that these live virtual trainings are open to any new landscaping company or any landscaping company that may want to revisit some of the features that are available within the actual LMN software. So please remember that if it is a confidential or private question or related question, that you write that question down and reach out to our support team. You can hit us up on chat, give us a call, send us an email. We have somebody on standby ready to answer your questions about your company. All right, so keep that in mind, everybody, and let's start talking about job costing. So when we first start talking about job costing, again, it's estimated versus actual. So we're going to be walking through the various steps involved in getting your job set up so that you guys can, well, job cost them, right? So you can understand what your estimated versus your actuals are actually going to look like. And we'll be taking a look at some of the different steps involved with this, as well as some of the other features that are available with the actual job costing tool within your LMN accounts. Now, here's the good news. Okay, if you haven't been on any of our job costing webinars, this one might look a little bit different than some of the other live virtual trainings that you've attended. Now, with most of our live virtual trainings, we kind of jump between slide presentations and the actual LMN software. But for today, we're going to be spending the bulk of our hour actually diving into LMN together. All right, so let's cut that off, or let's, I guess, cut to the chase and let's get right into LMN. So the first things first, we kind of need to kind of get a good understanding of where job costing starts. Well, like I mentioned a little bit earlier in my opening speech, I guess if it were, okay, job costing is estimated versus actuals. So where do we get started? Well, we start with the estimates, of course. So what we really want to do is we want to start taking a look at our estimate, and couple things that we want to do, or a couple little items that we want to make sure before we go ahead and create a job so we can, well, job cost it. Now, you may have heard one of us mention this before, but it should come as no surprise that reality is when you guys are creating your jobs in LMN, especially from your estimate imports, it's a good idea to kind of put together a little checklist of items that you should verify that have been completed in the original estimate before you go and create a job. Now, the reason I bring this up is it just makes things a lot easier for the rest of your team. So if you have somebody involved that does financing, for instance, or job information, or whatever the case may be, everything should be set up in the job originally, so that way you don't have to do any second guessing or any additional work. So what exactly are those three items you should have on a checklist to verify that you've got it before you go ahead and convert your estimates into a job? Well, let's go through them together. First things first, okay? Make sure your estimate's been sold. Now, I know it probably goes without saying, and you're probably thinking, well, yeah, Chris, duh, we kind of know that. But reality is, I mean, you'd be surprised at how many people create jobs out of estimates that in reality aren't going to be going anywhere. You're not going to be doing any work or whatever. The reason is, I mean, a lot of people understand this, but LMN, there's no data limitations on your LMN account, right? You guys can create as many jobs as you want. If you want to create a job from an estimate that was rejected, fine, go ahead. But we recommend that you don't, because what's the point? Okay. Keep things really nice and organized. So again, verify that your estimate status has been changed to sold or accepted or approved, whatever statuses you've got set up in your account. But that should primarily be checklist item number one. Now, checklist item number two is ensuring that you've actually attached information for your crews while they're actually on the job site doing the work. This could be very simple little pieces of information that they need to know about, maybe where they should park or where they shouldn't park, okay? Or being advised as to, there might be a dog in the backyard or a gate code to get into the backyard. Whatever the cases might be, providing your crews with as much information as possible in the original estimate as a crew note, make sure that when this actually gets converted into a job moving forward, if that information is going to be there and readily available, so your crews could basically hit the ground running. You want them to get to the job site and not have to stop and call you and say, okay, I'm here. Is there anything I need to know? Let's just get going. All right. You guys want to be as efficient as possible and ensure that you guys are working or getting as much man hours of labor done in a day as possible. So checklist item number two is going up into your crew notes tab of the actual proposal and making sure that you've got crew notes in place. Like I said, gate codes, toolkits, or tool layouts, whatever the cases might be, right? Ensuring your crews have as much information about the job as possible. Now, checklist item number three is making sure that you have your contract set up. Now, in this case here, okay, I've already gone ahead and put together an actual contract. Now, why would I do this? Well, again, creating your jobs in LMN from your actual estimate imports, if you have information already in the estimate, it will get created for you automatically when you create it or when you convert it into a job. It just makes things really easy for you. But not only that, if you have a contract already set up in your original proposal, when you create the job, this job is already set up for billing, right? We're already ready for this. When the job is done, we can send out our invoices and so on and so forth. So again, it just makes things really, really simple. Now, I'm going to go back into my standard list here, and I'm going to look at a different estimate that we have already set up that's sold. We've got our crew notes already established for our paver driveway and our lighting enhancement. And of course, we've got our contract set up. So again, checklist items 1, 2, and 3. I can kind of go, yep, we're good to go. And now I could go ahead and create a job from it. So by going into my customer info tab, just again, a little bit of a refresher for everybody, customer info or work areas and pricing, I can go ahead and create my job. Now, neither of these buttons do anything different. So again, if you create your job from one tab or the other, it doesn't matter. You're still going to be able to create your job. So in this case here, I'm going to go ahead and create my job. And as my job gets created, okay, in this case here, we're going to skip the default tasks today because we don't really need those for job costing purposes, or at least to kind of go through the actual job costing feature together. But what I am going to bring over together is the 3 different work areas that we're going to be working on for this or within this actual proposal, right? The paver driveway, the backyard patio, and the lighting. So we'll pull this over by clicking on the import now, and we will go ahead and create our job, right? Really straightforward. You guys have already learned most of this already, so shouldn't come as any surprise. Now, when you guys have your actual job created, don't worry about turning the job costing feature on, okay? Basically, the moment you create your job, job costing is turned on already. Now, there are a few steps to set it up, and this is going to be with each and every single job that you guys create in your account. But for the most part, okay, job costing is basically ready to go at this point. Now, if you guys want to review anything, obviously you can go through and just do a quick little double check to check your job info, what tasks you're tracking or what work areas you're tracking, and to ensure that you've got invoicing turned on. It never hurts. But reality is the job costing feature is already set up for you. Now, when I go into the actual job costings menu, there are 2 features that are available for you. There's the overview of your job costing as well as your scoreboard. So let's take a look at our scoreboard. Now, a lot of individuals that attend these live virtual trainings always give us a question or always ask us what's so important about the scoreboard. Well, the scoreboard is basically a good way, and you guys should get in a good or should get into the habit of checking your scoreboards on your jobs because it provides you with some key information about your job as it's progressing in real time, by the way. Now, the scoreboard, yeah, very, very simple little graphic or very simple little animated screen here for you. But reality is it can be very, very important. So understanding that if I take a look at my 3 work areas that we imported or that we created within this job, we know that we've got a paver driveway, 130 man hours to do this, 180 man hours to do the backyard patio and the garden beds, and another 10 hours to do the lighting. Very, very straightforward. But when you actually take a look at the job costing and take a look at the scoreboard, why am I making such a big deal about this? Well, reality is, if you know that this is going to take 130 man hours, right, you kind of have a good idea about how long this project is going to take. So for instance, this 130 man hour job, if I were to send a crew of 4 individuals over to do this project, well, it could probably take a week or maybe 2. Now, if I'm, 3 days into the actual project and I've already clocked in, 80 hours worth of labor, just using some simple math here, everybody. But if I've already clocked in 80 man hours of labor and I'm only on day 3, well, kind of gives me some key information in relation to my overall job progress here. So again, by taking a look at my paver driveway and understanding that I've estimated 130 man hours, as your crews are clocking into this actual work area on this job site, that time is going to be live recorded. So every single day, your crews will provide you with an update as to how many man hours of labor have been spent. Doesn't matter which project they clock into or what work area they clock into, it will register their time. Now, at the very top of the page, we have a summary, right? So we know we've got 320 total man hours on the entire job site, right? Made up of those 3 individual projects. And again, this is a good little indicator for you all to be able to just quickly monitor this and say, well, we're only in day 3 and we've already recorded 200 man hours. How is that possible? This will help you guys to determine where some potential issues might be. Did your estimator not estimate enough man hours? Did your salesperson not estimate or sell enough hours on this? Or is your crew taking too long with this? Or are they spending more time on the job site than there's absolutely necessary, or on one work area more than another, and so on and so forth? Or maybe did they clock into the wrong thing and they recorded hours against this project versus another project by accident? So again, there's some different ways that you guys can look at the scoreboard to kind of gauge how your project is progressing, or the overall, time to completion, to ensure that your estimated values are going to be higher than your actual values in some cases, of course. Now, that's kind of just a quick little overview of the scoreboard feature within the job costing. But reality is we want to get into the overview today. And we're going to be spending most of our time in the overall job costing overview section of the actual job. Now, when you first create your job, and job costing is, like I said, automatically activated for you, you'll notice here that we provide you with a list of items that were included in your original proposal, right? That you were going to be billing for. And in addition to that, we're going to be providing you with an estimated quantity versus actual quantity, estimated value or estimated cost, sorry, and an actual cost associated. Now you can take a look at this page, and the first thing I'd like to ask each of you, or all of you, and if you don't mind, you can hit me up on the chat button, but what other tool in LMN does this remind you of, the way that this is laid out with labor, equipment, materials, subcontractors, and other? Tell me what you think. There are no wrong answers, by the way, but hit the chat button and let me know what other tool this represents or reminds you of in LMN. Anybody? Again, no wrong answers, just guesses. Okay, I've got budget. Anything else? And thank you for that, Seth. No other guesses today, huh? Okay, so think about it this way. Okay, what do these categories actually represent? Okay, these represent the items that you're going to be billing for, or representing some of your costing, right? Labor costs, equipment costs, material costs, subcontractor costs, and other costs. So what does this actually, or what other tool was I trying to, hopefully going to get one of you guys to tell me? And Seth, you were kind of close on this one, so I'm going to give you like a half mark on that one. But essentially, this category layout is laid out exactly the same way as your price list. And you're probably wondering, well, okay, that makes sense, but why? Well, think about it this way. You're going to have labor items that you're going to be billing for, equipment items that you're going to be billing for, material items that you are going to be billing for, subcontractors potentially that you might be billing for. And where do you put all this information, or where does all this information come from? Well, not only does it come from your estimate, but it comes from your price list. Okay. So the price list and the categories layout from in the job costing menu are virtually the same. So again, we provide you with a little bit of familiarity to kind of just wrap everything up together, right? It kind of just makes more sense. Well, here are my labor items, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, at the very top of your category list, okay, labor has an estimated quantity, an actual quantity, estimated cost, and actual cost, as do all the other items as well, right? Where we've got estimated cost versus actual costs. But if you notice with labor, okay, labor will actually provide you with a total estimated quantity of labor versus equipment, materials, subcontractors. Now, this might be a trick question, and you may not know what the answer to this is, but you might have a guess. So why do you think that LMN can provide you with an estimated quantity total of labor, but we don't do that among the other 4 or 5 categories that are also available? Any guesses to this one? We can provide you with an estimated quantity of labor, but you notice that there's no estimated quantity with equipment, materials, subcontractors, or other. Well, to be fair, okay, and again, not to waste any time, but it happens to deal with unit of measure, okay? So when you guys are actually looking at your job costing, time is always measured in, well, hours and minutes, right? It's pretty straightforward. So if you've got 320 man hours broken down into the individual projects that you're going to be working on, 130 for the driveway, 10 for the lighting, 180 for the backyard. Okay, again, each work area is broken down in the actual job costing underneath its primary category. But when it comes to equipment, okay, materials, subcontractors, okay, these could have different units of measure. So LMN is not going to provide you with a subtotal amount of equipment because some of your equipment you might be charging out on a flat rate or by the hour or by the day. Materials might be charged by each or by the square foot or by cubic foot or by a ton or whatever the case may be. So again, depending on how each price list item was originally created, we're not going to try and guesstimate, okay, what the estimated quantity of all of your equipment is going to be, the estimated quantity of all of your materials are going to be, and so on and so forth, as far as overall quantities are concerned. Now, costing, on the other hand, is a completely different story. That we can provide you guys with an estimated cost as a kind of total per category. So here I can see that I've got almost $1,900 associated in cost to my equipment, 10 grand or just over 10 grand for all the materials that are going to be involved, and so on and so forth. So we can provide you with that information. Now, the next thing that you guys are going to want to look at is when you guys are actually putting together your job costing and once you've created your job, one of the other differences that's available or that is very apparent, or maybe you missed it, but if you didn't, is your overhead. Okay. Now, if you take a look at the very bottom of this layout or this overview, you'll notice here that we have an estimated quantity of overhead that we're going to recover for this job, but we already have an actual amount of overhead that we're going to recover on this. So we haven't done any work on this yet. Crews haven't been sent out. We haven't, started the driveway or the patio or started the lighting. So how can we already have some actual amount of overhead recovered? Well, this is basically going to be a fixed amount. Now, I'm going to ask all of you to be very, very honest with me, okay, in this case. So, for instance, if you complete this project within 300 hours, as it is laid out, you're going to complete the driveway, you're going to complete the patio, you're going to complete the lighting, and you're going to complete it in 300 hours. Are you going to charge your customer any less than what the contracted price was? Be honest. Let me know. Yes or no. And if you spend more time on the actual job site, are you going to charge your customer more for taking longer to do the actual project in the first place? So, for instance, if you look at the labor, and I've got 130 man hours of labor tied into, or at least estimated for the driveway. If I spend 140 man hours of labor, am I going to charge my customer more, even though I built the driveway to spec, or at least the way that it was originally planned out? Will you charge your customer any more for that, for those 10 hours? Nobody brave enough to be honest, huh? Now, I do understand, or I do get that changes can happen or adjustments need to be made and so on and so forth. And of course, there's ways to deal with that as well, right? Change orders, et cetera, et cetera. But for the most part, if you were to take this job as it is from the original estimate, complete this job as originally planned within the time that was originally estimated, your actual amount of overhead that you're going to recover on this job will not change. Okay. Because of the way you've laid out your pricing, the quantities, the time that it's going to take, and so on and so forth. When you guys set up your original budget, you guys allocated or you determined how you are going to recover your overhead, and it's going to be a percentage of markup or whatever the case may be. So that way you're going to recover overhead. So if I take a look at my original proposal, okay, I already know that in my proposal, when I put this job together for $30,000, okay, I was going to recover roughly 4 grand worth of overhead based on the price that I quoted out my customer. Now, of course, my customer, okay, we're going to be charging, or we're going to be making 17% of net profit on this job. That kind of goes without, that's kind of here nor there at this point in time. But as far as the amount of overhead that we're going to be recovering, that's fixed based on the quantities of materials, equipment, labor, and so on and so forth that I've put into this actual quote. This is not going to change. So when you look at the actual job, your actual amount of overhead that you're going to recover is going to be the exact same as what you had originally estimated in the first place. All right. So that's kind of giving you guys a little bit of not inside information, but a little bit of information as to overhead and why we can provide you with an actual amount of overhead before you even get this job started. Okay. So now you kind of have a good idea of what you're looking at when you actually open up a job, and if you want to start getting it, or if you want to start job costing it. But there's a couple things that you need to do, okay, before this is actually going to start providing you with some real data or some information about this job as you guys are actually working on it. So it does need to get set up. How do we set this up? Okay, well, essentially, the good news here, folks, is that labor doesn't require any setup. Okay, it's already set to be tracked the moment you create your job. It's just basically the way LMN works, right? So when your crews are actually on the job site and they clock into one of these 3 work areas, it'll start registering how much time, okay, has been spent on this job by crew member. All right, crew lead, crew member, whatever the case may be. But what isn't going to be set up for tracking automatically are the other 4 categories: equipment, materials, subcontractors, and the other category. These ones actually have to be turned on. So when you start looking at equipment, for instance, okay, although I don't have a subtotal or a total amount for all my equipment, if I open this up, I can see the amount of time that was originally quoted from my original proposal that I'm going to be tracking against, or that I might want to track moving forward. So how much time have we spent using the excavator, or how many time have we spent using the skid steer or the crew truck or what have you? Okay. These are items that are going to need to be turned on so that you guys can track them from the field, or your crew leads or foreman can provide you guys with that data. So how do you do that? Well, rather than just clicking on the actual equipment list, okay, which will provide you with an overview and of course our vendor bill feature, which I'll talk about in a little bit, we want to actually look at the individual pieces of equipment so that we can determine which ones we want to track, so we can get a good idea of their cost versus their actuals moving forward. So you may not necessarily want to turn or activate everything for tracking. okay? A crew truck, probably not required. You know the crew truck is going to be there for a day, right? Your crews are going to be leaving your yard or your office. They're going to be going to the job site. They're going to be coming back. You know it's out for the day. But what you might want to track are specialty pieces of equipment like the skid steer or the excavator, for instance. So in this case here, I know I'm only using the skid steer for 3 days. So I want to track how long that skid steer is actually being used. So in this case here, I want to go into the skid steer by clicking on its actual item name, and it opens up a menu for me, just like we did before with the equipment category. But now this is just specifically for the skid steer. Now, when I'm looking at this track skid steer information, I again have another scoreboard where I could evaluate the days that it's being used and the cost of that usage while it's actually out in the field. And this will populate as my crews are actually registering their time or allocating that they used the skid steer for a day or 2 days or whatever the case may be when they actually fill out their timesheets at the end of the day. Now, when I go to the timesheet section of each item, I'll be able to see any timesheet records that this skid steer was recorded on. So I'll get a history of any timesheet records. So I'd be able to prove, okay, yeah, it was actually sent out with my design build crew, but why am I getting information on it from another crew or whatever the case may be? All that data will populate here. What you guys are going to be more tuned into, okay, are the basic settings of this skid steer. So in this case here, we want to track this skid steer on the timesheets. So we want our crews to let us know, okay, how much time or how many days have you actually used this skid steer for? So by default, we're getting 3 days. Now, where does this default number come from? Any guesses? How does LMN know that we've got a default quantity of 3 days for the skid steer? Where did we get that information from, or where did we pull that information from? Well, we pulled it from the original estimate, right? So if we go back to the original proposal, take a look at the work areas, and maybe take a look at some of these individual work areas. Okay, I can see here that it wasn't used on the paver driveway, but if I go down to the backyard patio and the garden beds, okay, I could take a look and see that we've got the track skid steer as a billable line item included in the price for our backyard patio, and we're going to need the skid steer for 3 days. So that information or that 3 day estimated amount is basically being populated for us as a defaulted quantity. So our crews are now going to tell us each and every single day they use that skid steer. So if they happen to use it on the 4th day, okay, we're then going to have an overage as far as cost is concerned. We said we were only going to use it for 3 days, but my crews ended up using it for 4, which means it cost us more. Okay, so on and so forth. All right. Now, additionally, once you've actually turned this on to be tracked on the timesheets and you've verified or validated the actual defaults, you want to just quickly go through the actual invoicing and how this is going to be billed. And in this case, this skid steer is not billable. Okay. And you're probably going, well, yeah, it is. To a degree, you're not wrong. Okay. It is billable, but LMN consider this to be non-billable. Why? Well, because we've already got a fixed price on this job of $30,000.75. So although we are billing for it in within that $30,000 as far as the contract is concerned, we're not billing this out individually. All right. So that's what this means here by not billable, is we are not billing this individually for its use. It's included in that $30,000 price point that we quoted out when we set the proposal over to our customer. Okay. Now at the very bottom, just verify if this is going to be a taxable item or not, and then click on save. And now this item is ready to be tracked. We can do the same thing with the excavator. Go into its settings, track this one on our timesheets. We get our 2 days. So again, likewise for our backyard patio. And again, just quickly double check in our invoicing that we're not going to be billing this out individually for it. Okay, click on save. Now you can do the same thing with your materials. Okay, when you open up your list of materials LMN will populate the entire list of materials that you had in your original proposal for you automatically. So anything related to the lighting project, the backyard project, or the driveway project will all be notified or all listed out here for you. Now, the good news is it's all listed out alphabetically. Now, this is well, take it as you want. All right. It could be bad news or it could be, well, other news. Okay. Essentially, if you want to track any of the individual materials and their usage so you can track it against their cost specifically, each one of these items is going to need to be activated by themselves. Okay. So one at a time, right? So you're going to be looking at your disposal bin or let's say the gravel, the granular gravel for half a ton. Okay. If I want to track to make sure that my crew actually used half a ton, no more, or potentially a little bit less, that's fine. We need to go in and we need to turn this one on. So we're going to track it on our timesheets. We get our half ton. We go into invoicing. That's not being billed out. And we click on save. We can then start going into like landscaping fabric, right? With the landscaping fabric, we can track it on our timesheets. We know that we're going to need 4 of them. Go into our invoicing, make sure that it's not billable, and so on and so forth. So again, you want to go through and turn on items that you are going to be tracking or that you want to track on any of your jobs versus ones that you don't want to track on your jobs. Now, that could seem to be a little tedious or a little intimidating, especially for those of you that are doing very large scale projects, right? You're going to have to turn on each one of those items. There is another way to do this. Okay. I've shown you the more involved way of activating line items or materials or, trackable items. There is another way to do it. Okay. If you go down into the materials and equipment list within the job, okay, just like we did before, okay, we now have a list of all of our materials and equipment. Again, I can go into the type filter at the very top right-hand side of the screen, and I can filter by what do I actually want to see? I just want to see my list of materials. And then when I go into my list of materials, I do have the ability to kind of shortcut each item and just make sure that I'm tracking on my timesheets and of course track the quantities. So I could just go through each and every single one of these to ensure that they're turned on for tracking purposes. So I can get some data from my crews in the field as to how much they used and what my cost differential could be when it comes to the overall project, right? So each one of those is now all turned on. Okay. And so on and so forth. Now, if I want to get really specific, I can just, again, go into let's take a look at one of these lights, for instance. Okay. So I'm tracking on a timesheet, tracking my quantity. I know I've got 3. And when I go to invoice, I'm not billing it. Okay. So again, you can go in a little bit deeper and fine tune each one of those, each are individual line items as you wish or as you need. Okay. So that's kind of getting you guys started or at least activating your jobs for tracking certain materials and certain equipment on all of your jobs. Again, you will learn in very short order or in very short amount of time what items you want to track, which items you don't want to track to give you the ins and outs when it comes to your overall jobs. And if they were, if your estimated values were higher or lower than your actual values moving forward. All right. Again, not everything will need to get tracked. There are going to be some key pieces or key items that will be. There will be other items that for the first little while you'll track and then you'll kind of realize you don't need to anymore. And then you won't track those moving forward. But I'm going to leave that up to you. It's your decision. And you would basically be the better person to be able to make that decision moving forward. Okay. Now that we're in our job and we've got everything activated, we can now go ahead and clock into this job and actually start getting some actual numbers on this besides our actual overhead. And I know I keep saying actual quite a bit, but well, that's job costing for you, right? Estimated versus actuals. So what we want to do now is we actually want to get some information from our crew in the field, okay, in relation to this job, what they worked on, so we can show you how you're going to start populating or getting information live in real time in your actual jobs that you want to job cost. So if I open up my LMN Crew mobile app, Okay, I'm going to go into my work stuff folder. I'm going to go into LMN crew. Okay, and I want to clock into this actual job. Now, before I do that, I'm actually just going to put this job into a job group so I can find it nice and easy. So I'm going to add it into my job costing demonstration job group. All right, we know it's 830 Sanok Drive. So if I go back into my app, I can go into a job and look the job up. All right, so again, I can find a job, or I can find it really nice and easy by going into my list of job groups. And now I want to go into my job costing demonstration job group, and I can see I've got 600 Aspen Road, or I've got 300 Sanok, right? This is the job that we're just going through today. So in this case here, I can go to my select task, and we can now get a good overview of the actual job and what we want to clock into. So for today, I'm going to say we're going to be clocking into the paver driveway, for instance, okay? So we're going to clock into the paver driveway. I'm going to say that our start time was at 8 o'clock this morning. Okay. So we're going to just change that to 8 a.m. so we can get some actual time records on this. Click on done. Click on save changes. I know that I've got 3 individuals, Chris, Dwight, and Jim. If I wanted to add anybody else, I could always do so by going back and clicking on at the very top of my page. I could go into my today's crew and I can add a crew member if I needed to. But for all intents and purposes, okay, we're going to just clock into that 830 Sanok Drive. We're going to clock into the paver driveway. Okay, again at 8 o'clock in the morning. Okay, 8 a.m. Click on done. Click on save changes, and we're going to start our time. Okay, and again, your crew notes will pop up. So the notes that I had incorporated in my original proposal are now available as specific task instructions. So my crew know that they have a tool checklist that they need to go through, and they've got their installation specs. Okay, so very, very straightforward. We're just going to start our task now. Bear in mind as well that at any given time, if your crews need to go back to those notes while they're clocked into the actual work area, they can click on the instructions tab at the very top and it will give them those crew notes once again. So again, all that information is always available. So that being said, okay, so far we've been on site right now for 8 hours and 17 minutes combined, okay, for a total amount of, or sorry, individually, for a total amount of crew hours of 24 hours and 51 minutes, okay? So if I were to now clock out of this job, so let's say we're going to stop our time. We've got the 3 individuals stopping their time. We can then indicate what materials that we used. So in this case here, say we go down to our gravel and, you know, we're supposed to use 5. Let's say we've used 1 so far. Click on done. We'll go to our type B gravel. Actually, that one we're not using. We'll go to our paving edges, okay? And on our paving edges, we're only supposed to use 5. Let's say we've used 2 so far. And then our spikes, we're going to use 4. Let's say we've used 3, okay? Click on done. Click on next, okay? Again, I can provide some notes as to what we've accomplished so far. Click on next. I can add in before and after photos to give my customers a progress update, as well as you back at the office a progress update. Click on next. And I'm going to say that we clocked out at 3 o'clock, just to give us a little bit of a window. Okay. Click on done. End our task. It will provide us with an overview of what's been done. Time on site, 7 hours, 21 hours total, finishing at 3 o'clock, starting at 8 o'clock. Now, if I go back to my job, I should now have some actual information. So if I go back to job costing and I take a look at my scoreboard, okay, I can see so far, again, the scoreboard is going to gauge the overall job's progress in real time. So you'll be able to see that so far, out of the 320 total estimated man hours for this complete project, we've logged 21 hours or 7% of that 320. At the very bottom, you can see that we've spent 21 hours out of the 130 estimated man hours on the actual driveway. And it's listed as green, okay? Green is good, okay? You guys want to keep track. It's a really key indicator that green is always good. If you've gone over hours or what have you, this will be in red. So it will be a very, very clear indicator to let you guys know that you've spent more time on this project that was originally estimated, and it's going to end up costing you more moving forward. Okay. Now, if I take a look at my overview and go into my labor, if I take a look at my actual driveway, I should have some actual quantity, which I do not. So here's a question for you. Why, although my scoreboard is updated with live data, why do I not have any actual? I should have 21 hours, right, on this as far as the actual amount of hours spent on this job. Why am I not getting that 21? Or what we just logged in that timesheet? Does anybody know? What do your crews, or what should your crews be doing at the end of every single day when they're out in the field using our LMN Crew mobile app? What do they need to do at the end of every day? Does anybody know? Well, right now, our timesheet is still pending. It's still open. Okay. Meaning we could go to another job site or whatever the case may be at this point. But more importantly, for you to lock in the information that was recorded in the LMN Crew mobile app as far as the job costing principles are concerned, your crews need to submit their timesheet. So if I were to go back into the LMN Crew mobile app again and take a look at the actual timesheet and review what we've done so far, okay, there's our 7 hours. There's our 21 total hours, right? 8 o'clock until 3 p.m. I want to submit my timesheet. Now, nobody took a lunch. Okay, we're going to click on submit, and we can see here that the timesheet has been submitted. Now, if we go back into our job and just do a quick little refresh, okay, now we'll start showing some actual information, right? So now I've got 320 man hours estimated. I've now logged 21. Now, of those 21, it had an estimated cost total of around 75, right? So $7,500. But right now we're at a total cost of $485.73. Additionally, on the far right-hand side, we'll provide you with a variance. So again, we've used 7% of the overall job so far. So we've got 93% of our overall estimated cost value or cost budget still available to us. Okay, that's what basically that variance is going to show for it. Now, at the very top of your screen, on every job that you guys are going to be job costing, LMN will provide you with some insights in how to actually make this job more accurate for job costing purposes, called action items. So at the very top of the page, we can see here that I've got 2 actions that I need to fix in order to make my job costing more accurate. And if I click on this little down arrow, it will provide me what that information is. I know that I need to update my wage cost for one staff member, and I need to create invoices, okay, in order for me to get some actual revenue numbers. Well, we're not there yet, okay? But one of the things I need to verify, because I know that this crew is going to be the crew that's working on this job all the time, I do need to update that wage cost for one of my staff members. So how do I do that? Well, in your actual settings menu, you're going to go into your manage users and staff settings, and you're going to look up each one of the individuals that's on this actual crew to verify that you have your wage cost set up, right? You need to know how much each one of these employees cost you while they're on the job site. So if I scroll down my list, I know it was Chris. So we'll take a look at Chris first. We'll go to our edit staff member. And under our edit staff member, we're going to go to time tracking and payroll, and we're going to go to wage costs. Now, under wage costs, I can see here that I do have a wage cost already set up for Chris. He cost me $44.84 per man hour. Okay, so that'll take into account his hourly wage plus the additional charges that I have to employ Chris, right? The labor burden. Okay, so I have all that in there at $44.84. Now, if I go back to my staff list and I look at Jim, for instance, okay, and do the exact same thing, I can go edit staff member, time tracking and payroll, wage cost, okay, and I can see that I've got Jim's. That just means that it must be Dwight. So again, back to my staff list, scroll down to I see Dwight, open up his staff member profile, and then time tracking and payroll, wage cost, okay, his is blank. So now I need to add in Dwight's wage cost information so that I can make sure that my job costing is more accurate. I'll do that by clicking on add wage cost and basically fill out this page with all the necessary information. How much do I pay him per hour? What's our current labor burden markup percentage? Is there going to be any weekly overtime on this job? And if so, it will adjust your hourly wage cost and click on add. Now, that's the long way of doing things, okay? The easy way of doing things, or the quicker way to do this, because if you send a crew of 8 individuals, okay, you're not going to want to go through every single one of their staff profiles to figure out which one's missing the wage cost. Let's let the actual job costing feature do it for us. So if we go to 830 Sanok Drive and we go into the job costing tool and into the overview, we can then click on the action item, and you may notice here that that one staff item is actually highlighted. So if we click on one staff, it'll automatically take us to Dwight K. Shrew. And we know by clicking on Dwight that we need to add in Dwight's wage cost. So here, I'm going to fill out that information. I pay Dwight, he's a junior, so I'm going to pay him $18.50 an hour. $18.50 an hour, according to our 2024 fiscal budget, with an 18% markup for labor burden. Dwight basically costs us $21.83. Now, if I factor in that there's going to be 4 hours of overtime this week, that will increase the cost to $22.82. But for now, we're just going to leave that at 0. We'll click on add. We'll click on save. Okay, and we've now jumped from $485.73 to $638.54. Okay, so now our job costing is slightly more accurate because we now know that all of our labor costs have been factored in, right? We know exactly how much we're paying our crew members and our crew leads to work on this actual job site. Now, if you want to do that last step when it comes to getting some revenue information, you can go into your invoicing, go down into your invoice schedule. And for instance, if I wanted to take this $15,000 invoice and create an invoice for this, right, according to my action items, right, I needed to update my wage costs and I needed to create an actual invoice. So if I create an invoice for this job and click on OK, okay, there's my actual invoice, and I'm just going to make this, oops, sorry, clicked the wrong button. My apologies. So let's take a look at this invoice here. We're going to edit this one to $1,500 flat. Wow. Okay, $1,500 plus tax. Click on save. Okay, so now we've generated that invoice. Now that we've got an invoice created, if we go back to job costing and go back to its overview, okay, we no longer have any action items that require our attention. Everything is on track. We have our $15,000 revenue, or 50% of our estimated value. Okay, 30,000 total, 50% estimated or invoiced out so far. And we'll get some more information moving forward. Okay, so that kind of gives us a good little overview, or to make sure that we're on track right now as far as our job costing is concerned. Okay, now I have one more little feature that I wanted to talk to you guys about, and I hope you guys can stick around for maybe another 5, tops 10 minutes. Okay, so stick around. There is one other feature that is available within job costing that will happen to you guys while your crews are actually out in the field, and you'll need to know how to make these adjustments. So one of the other features that is also tied in with job costing is a feature called vendor bills. Okay, Vendor bills allow you guys, if you do not have inventory on certain materials that were available or that were originally planned out for one of your jobs, and your crews had to stop on the way to the actual job site, or heaven forbid, take time out of their day, go to an actual vendor like a Home Depot or a Lowe's or whatever the case may be, and then go back to the actual job site because they didn't have that material on hand. This is how you can track that expense of going out and making that purchase, either, like I said, on the way down to the job, or sorry, on the way over to the job, or while you're on the actual job site. So by going into the plus button in the very bottom right-hand corner, you can add in a receipt or a record of that purchase. So in this case here, I'm going to say that we went to Home Depot. Okay. And while we were at Home Depot on today's date, okay, you would want to enter in the receipt's ID number or the receipt number, and the crews can enter in, or you can enter in what was required. Aluminum edging. Okay, so needed aluminum edging. So we're going to enter that in here. And while we're looking at aluminum edging or entering in the record for aluminum edging, you may notice here at the very bottom as well that there is a feature that will allow you to sync this record over into your QuickBooks account so that you guys don't have to do double manual entry, right? Keeps things really nice and easy. So again, we want to queue this record to our QuickBooks account. So I'm going to click on that little button at the very bottom. And this works with both QuickBooks Online and desktop. And here we're going to browse our files so we can actually upload our receipt. So in this case here, I'm going to go to my vendor bill folder that I've got in my computer. I'm going to attach my Home Depot receipt. And now I'm going to identify what my line items were. So in this case here, I'm going to save this so far. Okay. And if I go back to my actual job, okay, go to my job costing or go to my materials and equipment. And if I look at my paving edges, okay, I notice here that when I'm paying for these, okay, a unit cost on one of these is $13.56. But if I go into my vendor bill record, okay, oh, it disappeared. Okay, Home Depot, reference number. Needed edging. Upload my receipt. Okay. I now want to identify what did we buy in relation or that's applied to this actual job. So in this case here, we're going to enter in that we needed aluminum edging. Okay. And we bought 10 lengths. Now we bought 10 lengths at $15 each. Okay. Plus tax. Right. So we normally buy them for $13.56 from our regular vendor. But today, because we didn't have any from our our original or regular vendor, we had to go buy out some or go buy some special. So in this case here, we spent a little bit more on it. Right. So we're going to add in our items. And now we're going to allocate what we actually use to this job site. So here, that aluminum edging that we bought 10 of, we're going to allocate it to the 830 Sanok drive. It is a material. And out of those 10, we used 3 lengths. So we're going to allocate the 3 out of the 10 that we purchased to this actual job and click on save. Okay. So now that we've got that saved, we can close this off. And if we go into our overview and take a look at our materials, okay, if we look down at our aluminum edging, okay, paving edge aluminum, okay, we can see what our actual cost is versus our original cost, okay, and how it's been adjusted. We can also take a look at our vendor bills and kind of get a good idea here that we have a couple here of $169.50 overall cost. So the vendor bill feature will allow you to track any materials that were purchased from a secondary supplier on the way to a job that weren't originally available when your crews were actually heading down to the actual job site to complete that work, okay, and give you guys that record. Now, additionally, under the materials and equipment tab, if there are any other pieces of equipment or any other materials that were added to this job that were not originally estimated, you can also add them to the job here as well. So by going to the materials and equipment tab, you can click on the plus, and this will allow you to add items from your price list. Again, materials, equipment, subcontractors, or from your other category. Okay, and allow you to incorporate that additional cost into your actual job. So if there was a piece of equipment that we needed as well that we didn't factor in the first time, so let's say a maintenance trailer or a mini excavator or something like that, or again, we didn't originally factor that one in. Okay, we're going to add it from our price list. We're going to factor this in for 1 day. Okay, so now this is going to be trackable. And again, if you're going to be billing this out to your customer on top of the original price, you would make sure that you set this up to per unit and so on and so forth. So adjust its billing. But again, if it should have been estimated or included in your original estimate, but it was not included in your original estimate and you want to track its cost, you can simply go ahead and add it to the actual job on the fly as you need. All right, so keeps things very, very straightforward, fairly regular for as far as job costing is concerned, right? So again, it will break it out a little bit differently for you to let you know these were the estimated items and these were the ones that were added to the job that were not originally estimated in the first place, right? Kind of gives you an overview of that, okay? So before I let you guys go, there's one other thing that I need you guys to do for me, and just simply go through a very quick little poll and get some feedback on what you guys have learned today from the actual job costing for design build session. So again, just take some time now, go through those 3 very simple questions, okay, and give us some feedback on what you guys have learned. Additionally, some other things that you guys should be made aware of in relation to the education department here at LMN and what's available to you to enhance your overall learning are our help desk feature and our LMN Academy online. So if there's anything you want to know a little bit more about, whether it be the budget, the price list, the CRM, or job costing, please make sure you check out our help desk or our LMN Academy online features that will allow you guys to learn at your own pace. Maybe there's a couple things that you want to learn specifically, head on over into the Academy and watch a very short little video tutorial, okay? If you have any questions about anything that's been covered off in today's session, again, please feel free to hit that chat or that Q&A box at the very bottom of your screen. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. Again, just a quick reminder that if you have anybody in your company or anybody on your team that would like to have some virtual trainings or should be registered for some virtual trainings, I'll just paste the link to our webpage. Okay, you can find this on our main webpage under our resources menu, but I'll paste it for everybody in the chat. Okay, click that link and that will give you a month-to-month view of what virtual trainings are available, when they are, and of course, you guys can register as many individuals as you want to any of our trainings. Additionally, stay tuned because coming very, very soon, I believe it's in 2 weeks, we're also going to be having an in-person, in-class 4-day session on everything LMN. Okay, we're going to be holding this in 2 separate weeks. Week number 1 is going to be basic LMN training, but again, in person. And week number 2 is going to be advanced training. So again, if you go into our main webpage under our resources menu and take a look at the Academy certification program, if you're interested in our 4-day LMN Academy certification program, please click this link in the chat box. Okay. And if you're interested in our 2-day snow event, which is going to be happening in various cities across the US, coming up, I believe they start the week of August 20th. Okay, these will be available in 5 different cities. But if this is something that is of interest to you as well, I'll give you the link for this one. So again, in the chat, all right, click that link and you can get registered for our snow training sessions. As well, always remember that we have our weekly mastermind sessions that you guys are always available to attend. So I'll give you the link for that as well. So these are our events and our webinars. So this is our mastermind sessions that are available every week. So let's see if we can hear. I'll give you the sign up link for those. Lots of links today, huh? All right. That's the last one, I promise. Okay. Anyway, highly recommend you guys check these out. These are not LMN specific. Okay. These are landscaping industry sessions that are held every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. So again, very handy. Guest speakers galore that we have on all of these. So various speakers. It's not always somebody from LMN, but we generally have some guest speakers here and there. So again, highly recommend you check these out. So my last little note to everybody, thank you. Okay. Thank you for sticking around an extra 11 minutes for our session today to learn a little bit more about job costing. Thank you for attending all of our live virtual trainings. We here at the at LMN and on the education team, we really appreciate you guys joining us for each of these sessions. We appreciate your questions and your feedback. So please, on behalf of all of us here at LMN, again, thank you. Okay, please stay well. Stay safe, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you on one of our next exciting live virtual trainings. All right, so take care, everybody. Have a great day, and please don't forget to fill out our little 2-question survey that will pop up once this webinar closes today. All right, take care, everybody. Have a good afternoon, and we will see you again very, very soon. All right, bye-bye.